Welcome back to Polytalks Cast. Today, we're going to be looking at space exploration, focusing on missions to Mars and other space initiatives. We'll be using an article called Space Exploration and the Future of Humanity, Missions to Mars and Other Space Initiatives, and also NASA's Why Go to Space webpage. I'm really excited to see where this deep dive takes us.
Yeah, me too. It's a fascinating topic for sure.
Okay, so both of our sources kind of start by going back in time, talking about the history of space exploration, all those, iconic missions that captured people's imaginations. What really stands out to you from those early days?
I mean, you can't really talk about it without mentioning that Cold War space race. Between the US and the Soviet Union, such intense competition, it really drove incredible innovations and led to some incredible achievements too. Like, think about it, Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, and obviously the Apollo moon landing. Like, all that really laid the groundwork for everything that's happening today.
Totally. It wasn't just, about science. It was about national pride and pushing boundaries, really proving what humans could do. But things have changed quite a bit since then, right?
They really have. The whole landscape is just so much bigger now. You still have your government agencies, of course, like NASA and the European Space Agency. But now you have all these private companies jumping in too. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and tons more.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, you have Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos launching rockets and putting up satellites and even talking about sending people to Mars. It's straight out of science fiction.
I know, it's insane. And all this private sector involvement, it's changing everything, bringing in money, speeding up innovation, making things cheaper. So it's just opening up tons of possibilities for space exploration.
For sure. And speaking of possibilities, both sources really focus on Mars. Like, it's the next frontier. Why is that? What makes it so special for exploration and maybe even, colonization?
Well, people call it Earth's twin a lot, and for a good reason. It's got a similar day length, seasons, even polar ice caps. But the really exciting part is that there's evidence Mars used to have water, maybe even oceans. And that makes you wonder.
If there was life. Like ancient Martian microbes.
Exactly. It's a huge driving force for all the Mars missions these days. And it's not just like a theory anymore. You've got missions like NASA's Mars 2020 with the Perseverance rover, right? They're actually looking for signs of past life, analyzing soil samples, exploring these ancient lake beds.
That's just, wow. Can you imagine scientists huddled around looking at data from another planet, trying to figure out if we're alone in the universe?
I know, it's so cool. But it's not just about ancient life, right? Some people, like Elon Musk, see Mars as a backup plan for humanity, just in case something terrible happens to Earth.
Whoa, really? So you're talking about, like, colonizing Mars, building settlements, growing food, a whole new Martian society.
That's the idea. And companies like SpaceX are already working on the tech to make it happen. You've got their Starship program. It's designed to be totally reusable, to transport people and stuff to Mars and back. And they're even saying the first crewed mission might be as early as 2026.
2026. That's like right around the corner. But hold on. Mars is a pretty brutal place, right? The thin atmosphere, no air to breathe, crazy temperatures. And don't forget all that radiation from the sun. How would people even survive there?
You're not wrong. There are some serious challenges if we want to live on Mars permanently. We'd need to figure out how to make air breathable, generate energy, protect ourselves from all that radiation. Plus, growing food in Martian soil, building habitats that can survive those conditions. It's not going to be easy.
It sounds almost impossible. So are, scientists and engineers working on solutions for all this? Or is it just a pipe dream?
Well, it's definitely not going to be a walk in the park. But there are some pretty wild ideas out there. Some scientists are talking about terraforming Mars, basically changing its environment to make it more like Earth.
Terraforming? You mean like changing the atmosphere, creating oceans, turning it into a green paradise? It sounds like something out of a movie. How would we even do that?
It's definitely a long shot. But there are some theoretical ideas. Like, one idea is releasing greenhouse gases into Mars' atmosphere to try to warm it up and maybe melt the ice caps, which would release water. Others involve, like, sending microbes to Mars to help generate oxygen and make the soil more Earth-like.
That's insane. But changing a whole planet like that, that's got to raise some serious ethical questions, right? Do we even have the right to do that?
You're absolutely right. Terraforming Mars is a very controversial topic. There's a lot to think about ethically and philosophically. Some people say we should leave Mars alone, even if it means limiting our own potential. Others say we need to do it for humanity's survival, that the benefits outweigh the risks.
Wow, it's a huge debate. It really shows you how complex this whole thing is. It's not just about the science, it's about our responsibility as humans and the choices we make out there in space.
Absolutely. And these questions are only going to get bigger as we explore more. But before we go too deep into the ethics of terraforming, maybe we can switch gears a bit. Talk about some other cool space initiatives that are happening right now. What else stuck out to you from our sources?
Well, one thing that really caught my eye was this NASA's Artemis program. Artemis is the Greek goddess of the moon, right? So I'm guessing it has something to do with our little lunar buddy.
You got it. The Artemis program is all about going back to the moon. And not just for a quick visit like the Apollo missions. This time the goal is to stay there, like build a whole lunar base.
A lunar base, a permanent setup where astronauts can live and work. Why would we do that? Wouldn't it be super expensive and difficult to keep running?
Yeah, it would definitely be a huge challenge, but there are some good reasons to do it. For one, it's like a stepping stone, a place to test out technology and figure out how to do longer missions, like for a future trip to Mars. And since the moon has lower gravity, it could be a launch pad for missions further out, less fuel needed than launching from Earth. Plus, the moon itself is super interesting for science. Lots of resources to mine and unique environments to explore.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's like setting up a research station in Antarctica.
Oh.
Tough, but super valuable for science.
So when are we talking here? Will I be able to take a vacation to the moon in my lifetime?
Well, NASA wants to put the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2025, part of the Artemis III mission. And they're planning to build on that, sending more missions, slowly building up a more permanent setup on the surface. So maybe vacations aren't right around the corner, but it's definitely moving towards humans having a real presence on the moon. That's pretty amazing. And both our sources talk about how important technology is for all of this, like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, renewable energy. It's a tech lover's dream.
Yeah.
What are some of the big advancements that are really changing what we can do in space?
One of the big ones is propulsion. We need better, more powerful rockets to get to these far-off places. Companies like SpaceX are doing some amazing stuff with reusable rockets like the Falcon 9 and Starship, way cheaper, which is huge. And then you have robotics. Robotic probes and rovers are already super important for exploring Mars and other planets. And as we go further, they're going to be even more vital. AI is making them more and more autonomous too. So they can do complicated stuff without humans needing to control them all the time.
It's mind-blowing, right? Robots on other planets, millions of miles away, doing their thing. But on the topic of technology, there's one idea that I found super intriguing. Asteroid mining. It sounds like something straight out of Star Wars, but I guess it's a real thing now.
Oh yeah. Asteroid mining is getting a lot of attention, both from scientists and businesses. Asteroids are basically these giant space rocks, right? Full of valuable stuff like water, metals, even precious minerals.
So the idea is to get these resources from asteroids, and then what? Use them to build stuff in space, or bring them back to Earth.
Both. Think about it. Water from asteroids could be used to make rocket fuel in space. Saves us from having to carry it all the way from Earth. The metals and stuff. You could use those to build habitats, spacecraft, other structures out there, and bringing those resources back to Earth could help with resource shortages and open up new economic opportunities. It's like a whole new era of mining, but in space.
That's crazy. But wouldn't that, be a problem? Ethically, I mean. Are we just going to go around strip mining space without thinking about the consequences?
Mm-hmm. It's a valid point, for sure. Anytime you have a new frontier, you have to think about the ethics. Some people say we need international rules, treaties to make sure it's done responsibly and sustainably. Others are worried about countries fighting over resources or companies exploiting space for profit without any oversight.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. It seems like every exciting opportunity in space also comes with a potential downside. But I guess that's true of most progress, right?
Totally. Progress always comes with risks, and space exploration's no different. It's about being careful, being aware, and making responsible choices.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground in this first part of our deep dive. From the space race to colonizing Mars, building moon bases, and even mining asteroids. It's a lot to take in. What are your thoughts so far? What really sticks out to you?
For me, the biggest thing is that we're entering a whole new era of space exploration. What seemed impossible just a few decades ago is becoming real, and it's all happening so fast. It's driven by new tech and a renewed sense of wanting to explore. But as we go further, we have to be careful, thoughtful, and really consider the ethical and philosophical implications of what we're doing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a great place to wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
So, picking up from where we left off, one thing that really hits me from both these sources is this idea of space exploration as like a mirror.
Oh, that's interesting. A mirror? How do you mean?
Well, it's almost like it makes us look back at ourselves, at humanity, It brings up all these big questions like, Who are we? What are we doing here in this huge universe? And what are we supposed to be doing as we go out and explore?
That's pretty deep. So it's not just about the science and tech stuff, but also about like our values,
Yeah.
ethics, philosophy even.
Exactly. It's about understanding how what we do affects things, not just other planets, but humans too.
Makes sense. Last time we were talking a lot about the good stuff that could come from space exploration, like cool new tech we can use here on Earth, maybe even solving problems like resource shortages with asteroid mining. But what about the not so good stuff? Are there risks we should be thinking about too?
Oh, for sure. Both sources talk about that. One thing that comes up is the potential for space to become militarized. As more countries and companies too get up there, there's this risk of competition turning into, conflict. Imagine countries fighting over like spots in orbit or resources on the moon or even territory on Mars. It's kind of scary if you think about it, like a space arms race.
Yikes. Yeah, that sounds pretty intense, like taking all the problems we have down here and just shooting them off into space.
Right. And then there's the environmental impact. We already have this problem with space junk. Old satellites, rocket parts, all kinds of debris floating around up there. It's a real danger for spacecraft. Could even create this, chain reaction where collisions cause more debris, and then it's even harder to travel safely in space.
Oh, wow. So we're polluting space too. We have enough problems with pollution down here.
Yeah, it's becoming a big concern, something we have to deal with if we want to keep exploring space in the long run. And with asteroid mining, we need to think about that too, the impact on those asteroids. Is it even right to take resources from them without thinking about the consequences?
That's a good point. It seems like every exciting new thing in space comes with a shadow side, some risk we need to be aware of. But I guess that's how it is with anything new, right?
Absolutely. Progress always involves some risk, and space is no different. It's not about stopping progress altogether. It's about being smart, being aware, and taking responsibility for what we do.
Speaking of responsibility, one of the things we talked about before that had some serious ethical questions was the impact of space exploration on alien life. What if, out there, somewhere, there IS life, maybe even intelligent life? Do we have the right to, mess with that?
It's a question that's been around for ages. Philosophers, sci-fi writers, everyone's thought about it. And it's becoming more and more relevant as we send stuff out there. First probes, and then eventually people. It's just crazy to think about, isn't it? We might not be alone. There might be other intelligent beings out there, maybe with their own cultures and technology and whole ways of understanding the universe.
It's almost too much to think about. What would that even be like? Humans meet aliens. It would change everything. How we see ourselves, the universe, everything.
It would be huge, one of the biggest discoveries ever. But it would also bring up so many questions, like how would we even talk to them? Would we be respectful, curious, or would we be afraid and mess things up? Would we see them as equals or try to, take advantage of them?
It's like all those sci-fi movies where humans meet aliens and things go wrong. Do we even have, a plan for what to do if we actually make contact?
People are starting to think about that more, which is good. There are groups like the SETI Institute. They're all about searching for alien intelligence, and they have guidelines for what to do if we ever pick up a signal. The idea is to be cautious, talk to experts from all over the world, and make sure anything we send out represents all of humanity, not just one country.
Yeah, that makes sense. First impressions are important, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of the unknown, do you think there's a limit to what we can learn about space? I mean, it's so vast, so complicated. Will we ever really understand it all?
That's the big question, isn't it? Scientists and philosophers have been wrestling with that forever. The universe is just mind-blowingly huge, and what we know now is just a tiny, tiny piece of it. But humans, we're curious. We want to explore. It's in our nature to push the limits of what we know. So even if we never understand everything, trying to learn is what matters.
It is kind of humbling to think about how much we don't know, but also exciting. There's so much out there waiting to be discovered. Makes you wonder what the future holds for space exploration. Will we have cities on Mars? Asteroid mines? Will we meet aliens? What do you think?
It's impossible to say for sure, but one thing's for certain. We're discovering new things and developing new tech faster and faster. What seemed like sci-fi a while ago is happening now. Who knows what'll happen in the next few decades? Maybe space travel will be normal. Maybe we'll have colonies on other planets, or maybe we'll find something completely new, something that changes everything we thought we knew.
Will we even be the same in 100 years? Will being in space change us? Make us evolve in ways we can't even imagine?
Those are some big questions. Exciting and a little scary too. But as we keep exploring the universe, we're also going to be exploring ourselves, our potential, our limits. And for me, that's what makes space exploration so amazing. It's not just about finding new worlds, it's about discovering who we are.
I love that. Discovering ourselves by exploring space. We've covered a lot of ground in this part, haven't we? From the potential for fighting in space to what it would mean to meet aliens, and just trying to wrap our heads around how big the universe is. Any final thoughts before we head into the last part of our exploration?
I think the big takeaway is that space exploration isn't just about science, it's about us. It's about our dreams, what we want to achieve, our fears, everything. As we go further out there, we need to do it with humility, with curiosity, and with a lot of respect for what we don't know. And we can't forget, the choices we make now will shape the future, for humans here on Earth, and maybe out there in space too.
Well said. That's a great note to end this part on. But stick around. And we're back for the last part of our deep dive into space exploration. In the last two parts, we got into some pretty heavy stuff, like the challenges, the risks, even the possibility of, conflict in space. But for this last part, I want to focus on something a little more positive. Explore some of the more hopeful and inspiring aspects of space. What do you think? Ready for some cosmic optimism?
I'm all for it. I think it's important to remember that space exploration is really about pushing ourselves, striving for something bigger than ourselves, and that's inherently optimistic.
Yeah, I agree. So let's jump into some of those more hopeful aspects. One thing that both our sources talk about is how important international collaboration is. It's not just about individual countries or companies anymore, right? It's a global effort.
Exactly. Just look at the International Space Station. It's a perfect example of what we can do when countries work together, share resources, share expertise. And as we try to tackle bigger challenges like, a permanent Mars base or going even further out, that kind of cooperation is going to be crucial.
Makes sense. Space exploration is a massive undertaking. It takes money, technology, and brilliant minds from all over the place.
And it's not just about the practical stuff either. There's something really inspiring about seeing humanity unite to explore space. It goes beyond borders, beyond politics, reminds us that we're all part of something much bigger. It's like we're all crewmates on this spaceship called Earth, figuring out how to navigate this vast universe together.
I love that. Crewmates on Spaceship Earth. It really captures that shared purpose, that shared responsibility. But with all this talk about other planets, it's easy to forget about, this one, our own Earth. Are there ways that space exploration can actually benefit life down here?
Definitely. Both sources talk about that too. Space exploration isn't just about leaving Earth, it's about understanding it better. When you see Earth from space, you see it as a whole system, all connected. We can study climate change, track natural disasters, see how resources move, even observe how humans are impacting the environment.
So it's like seeing ourselves from a new perspective, getting the big picture of our planet and how everything works together.
Exactly. That outside view can help us make better decisions about how to protect our planet, how to solve the problems we're facing. Plus, the technologies we develop for space often end up benefiting us here on Earth too, like GPS, satellite communication, even medical imaging. All those came from space research.
It's amazing. So, in a way, exploring space could actually help us save Earth by giving us the tools and the knowledge to understand and protect our planet.
It's definitely a possibility. The stuff we learn and the innovations we create in space have the potential to solve some of humanity's biggest problems, like climate change, resource scarcity, even disease.
It's kind of like a paradox, isn't it? We look out at the stars to explore the unknown. But in doing that, we might just find the answers to some of our biggest problems right here at home.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful idea. Space exploration shows us what we're capable of when we work together and set our minds to something.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the big takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Well, first, I hope they'll walk away with a sense of wonder, an excitement for the possibilities of space exploration. It's a field full of incredible discoveries, new technologies, and mind-blowing questions that really make us think about who we are and the universe we live in.
For sure. It's a journey that sparks our curiosity, our imagination, and reminds us of just how much human potential there is.
And second, I hope they'll understand that there are some complex ethical and philosophical questions that come with all this. It's not just about the science, it's about making responsible choices. Choices that will shape the future of humanity, both here and out there in space.
Well said. Space exploration isn't just about technical skill. It's also about wisdom, compassion, and understanding that we're all connected. to each other, to life on Earth, and maybe even to life beyond Earth.
And finally, I hope our listeners will be inspired to dream big, to embrace that spirit of exploration, and to never stop asking questions about the world or, worlds around us.
That's beautiful. I think you summed it up perfectly. So I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into space exploration. But before we go, I have one last question for our listeners, something for them to think about as they continue exploring these ideas.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine you know everything we've talked about, the challenges, the opportunities, everything. Would you volunteer for a one-way mission to Mars? Why or why not? What does that answer tell you about what drives us as humans? Our desire to explore, to push the boundaries, even when it's risky and uncertain.
That's a great question to end on. It really gets to the heart of what makes us human, our willingness to take risks, to sacrifice for something bigger than ourselves, to make our mark on the universe.
It's a question that makes us think about our deepest desires, our fears, and our hope for a future among the stars. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the world of space exploration. And don't forget to subscribe to the PolyTalksCast YouTube channel for more deep dives into fascinating topics.